Psalm 1, verse 4. In the prior two videos on Psalm 1:3, we looked at the attributes of the righteous person. Now we're going to take a look at the opposite. Uk hutos hoi asebes, uk hutos, al ehos hachnus, han ekripe animas, apoprasoputes geis. Well, we begin here with a very strong negation, uk hutos, so it's describing how the subject of this verse is not like or not as the prior descriptions in 1:3. And we are talking about the asebes. And asebes here, that's the plural form with the hoi. This is the word for ungodly. Sometimes it's used for the impious or something like that. The underlying Hebrew, though, is rashaim. And that's a pretty good pairing, but rashaim is more something like the wicked. And you'll often see in the Septuagint that that word is going to be translated with a form of kakos, perhaps, or animas, but here the translator of the Psalms has used asebes. It's kind of an interesting choice. So not so are the ungodly. And then we have a repetition. I'm going to come back to this here in a minute. Uk hutos, not so. So they are not like this tree planted by streams of water. All another strong negation, but as hachnus. Chnus here is dust. Now the Hebrew has chaff here, like the leftover bits of some sort of harvest, but this is a more generic term for dust. So the wicked or the ungodly are like dust, which, so the Han here is telling us more about the knus ekripe. This is from ekrypto, which in this form with the EI ending is a third singular present active and indicative. It means to drive away, and the subject is the anemos here, the wind. So the wind, it's Hebrew, it's ruach here. The wind drives away this dust. And interestingly, the song goes on, the translation here at least, goes on with from the face of the earth. Now I'm going to come back to that as well. That may not be familiar if you're used to this psalm in the Hebrew form. On that note, let's take a look at two interesting features. First off, this repetition of uk hutos. In the Masoretic, the Hebrew, you only have the initial locain, which is translated quite nicely with uk hutos here. It does not have the second one. The Vulgate, associated with Jerome here, which is, generally speaking, drawing on the Hebrew, though sometimes with Septuagint interference, also only has that initial one, non-sic, which in Latin is pretty much the same thing as uk hutos. However, the Gallican Psalter, which is sort of an initial form of a translation of the Psalter from mostly the Greek, actually does have the repetition, not non-sic, impious, non-sic. A little daily dose of Latin there. You'll see that that actually corresponds to the uk hutos. So whatever the source is of Jerome here for this Latin initial translation, it does have it as the Old Greek with that repetition. However, some of the scribes of these manuscripts of the Latin do mark it here with the obelisk indicating that it's present in the Greek but not present in the original Hebrew that they are aware of in some way. And the same thing is basically true from apoprasoputes geis. That is also not in the Masoretic text, which is why it may not be familiar to you. The Vulgate, once again, does not have it. It completely omits it. But the Gallican Psalter does have aphasie terrae, which would correspond to that. And again, some scribes mark that up as well. So some interesting stuff, a little introduction to some ancient translation issues that we deal with as with respect to what may be in the original Hebrew versus what we see in the Greek. And most likely, either an original copy of the Hebrew that the translator into Greek was using, maybe it had a second locain. In fact, that's what the editors of the BHS suggest, that maybe we should add a locain there at the end, which would lead to the second uk hutos, or perhaps it was an accidental ditography, a repetition. There's not enough evidence to know either way, but just interesting little feature in the Greek of Psalm 1:4.